Hello, folks. Now look at that. That is a mighty battleship. What we're looking at is the USS Alabama. Now this giant ship was commissioned and used for many different operations during World War II, all over the Atlantic and later the Pacific. This is one of those many famous ships that is now decommissioned and set aside as more of a museum in a way. You might be thinking, you said USS Alabama. Are we in Alabama? You'd be correct. Welcome to our 24th state. We did it, everyone. State number 24. Alabama. The Heart of Dixie, as they call it. Yes, you heard me. Heart of Dixie. That's a name by which a lot of Southerners call the South, given that we're pretty much smack dab in the middle of the territory that's considered the South. I guess it's a fitting nickname. So yeah, welcome to the Heart of Dixie. Yes, nothing but miles and miles of open water. Are we in the Gulf of Mexico like yesterday? Not quite. We are in the mo-BEEL Bay. That's right, we are in mo-BEEL, Alabama. Not mobile, not mo-BEEL, it's mo-BEEL. I thought it was mobile for my whole life, and then I realized, no, it's not. It's mo-BEEL, Alabama. So welcome. We are in the southernmost part of Alabama as a whole. Alabama is a state, like many others, divided into regions. And right here, as we go west, pretty much adjacent to the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, of course, we're gonna be in southern Alabama. Because of the shape of the southern coast of Alabama, it makes for a great strategic location. Not only as a commercial port, mo-BEEL was one of the main ports of the Gulf of Mexico. That's why it's a large city. It was also a great place to store military items and machinery. So naturally you're gonna see ships like these. The USS Alabama docked on, I think this is the western coast of that mo-BEEL Bay. On the other side, well, far into the distance you'll see the eastern coast of the mo-BEEL Bay. But once you go far enough south into the open blue, you're gonna see nothing but water. Cause that, when you go all that way, is the Gulf of Mexico. So as we admire this pretty body of water here, let's introduce ourselves to the grand state of Alabama. So what do you think of when you hear Alabama? Well, for one thing, I think of the song Sweet Home Alabama. I mean, we saw it on that sign at the rest area. Thank goodness for that song, because I guess maybe that might be Alabama's greatest claim to fame. Culturally, Alabama may just be as far deep south as you're gonna get here in America. And unfortunately, that results in a lot of stereotypes. You know, a lot of the backwards stereotypes that a lot of the people around the world think of Alabama for. At least here in mo-BEEL, I'm gonna try to dispel and dismiss a lot of those stereotypes you might be thinking of for a place like Alabama. For as backwards as you might think Alabamans are, well, take a look at what's behind us. Huge skyscrapers of a great large city. And mo-BEEL is only the state's 4th largest city. That means there are 3 other larger cities that may be more urban and cosmopolitan. In addition, up in the north, there is a huge NASA base full of science and technology. So that's Alabama. Yes, Alabama was a slave state. Alabama was part of the Confederacy, and there was a lot of history of unfortunate racism in this state. However, today, times may have changed, and let this video show you that Alabama should not be considered a caricature of what people think of Alabama society and its people may seem like. So Alabama is roughly equivalent in size to a lot of its other neighboring southern states. However, its Gulf Coast is a lot smaller than the likes of Florida or Louisiana. For that reason, people of Alabama really like to celebrate the coast around it. I mean, you can see there is this major city of mo-BEEL right on the coast. So before we leave this Battlefield Memorial Park, a beautiful, wonderful dedication to all of the veterans throughout the recent wars in our country's history. Let's take one last look at the Mobile Bay. Alright, there is the grand USS Alabama. Let's head downtown. But not before I give a quick mention to this park as a whole. Not only can you see this ship, but you can also see this elaborate display of all these tanks and planes and weapons that are by no means replicas. These are the authentic real deal, used in combat. We are now in the downtown of Mobile, Alabama. As you can see, it is not some small little city. It is a huge city, 190,000 people. Skyscrapers all around us. There's even the old part of the city preserved. We will get to that in detail later in this video, I promise. But we are in, right now, Mardi Gras Park. Now, Mardi Gras, doesn't that associate in your mind with New Orleans? Well, turns out that Mobile, Alabama has a lot more in common with Louisiana and New Orleans than it does other cities of Alabama. Mobile is a very old city. Before New Orleans, the original capital of French Louisiana. Yeah, during the colonial times, the French, they had a hand in a large part of the North American continent. From Quebec all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. From the Appalachian Mountains all the way west to the Great Plains, that Wild West area. The French had a lot of control. And here in Mobile, the French chose this strategic location to be their port city. Believe it or not, as famous as New Orleans is for hosting the world famous Mardi Gras, it may be America's biggest Mardi Gras, but it wasn't the first. Mobile had the first Mardi Gras celebration. This was the original one. So, as wild and as rambunctious as you may hear the Mardi Gras of Louisiana to be, come to Alabama. Here in Mobile, they have their own Mardi Gras festival that's a lot more, I guess, family friendly is a good way to put that. Every year here in Mardi Gras Park in Mobile, once a year they'll have Mardi Gras here. Mardi Gras was originally a religious holiday. It literally just means Fat Tuesday in French. But I guess in our American culture, Mardi Gras is more of just another time to celebrate and have fun and get wild. But what really surprises me here in Mardi Gras Park is the whole array of statues attributed to the traditions or the festivities. As you can see, this little monument of sorts commemorates the blend of so many different cultures that has made up the complete culture of Mobile. As this Mobile Bay area traded hands among various colonial empires and ultimately ended up in the hands of the American territory, well, you had Spanish, French, British, Creole, African American, and thus finally American culture, all encapsulated into this area. It's just so fascinating. You think of Alabama as a very cut and dry state. In certain regions, it is just not the case. And of course, not to mention that the natives were here first before these hundreds of years of Mobile's development as this unique city. So just another ingredient added into the pot of the blend of culture that we have here in this Mobile area. You have behind us what is known as Fort Conde, but it's also known as Fort Charlotte, and that's because in different languages, different kingdoms and colonial empires had different names for things. As things were taken over, things were renamed. I really like the backdrop. We have the scenery of a colonial fort dating back hundreds of years. albeit probably partially reconstructed. But then you have in the background this towering skyscraper of a more recent time. This is mo-BEEL. So we have mo-BEEL, the city, we have the mo-BEEL Bay, and now we also have the mo-BEEL River. Yes, this is the river. Of course, it's the namesake river, but it goes into the mo-BEEL Bay that-a-way. Now, the mo-BEEL River itself isn't a very huge river. It only goes for about, 45 miles or so inland. But what it is known for are two things. Its impressive watershed reaching states like Georgia, Tennessee, and Mississippi. And it's also known for its impressive biodiversity. Throughout the river, you're gonna find many, many different species of particularly snails. Here in mo-BEEL, I guess the river is used for a lot of industrial cargo. You see all these buildings related to shipping. I mean, there is a huge cargo ship coming our way. Before the advent of trains and automobiles, rivers were the highways of the world, linking one nation, one empire, to either other parts of its empire or nation, or to other kingdoms. And today, the port of mo-BEEL is still used for such purposes in trade. When rivers lead into large bodies of water, seas, ocean, or in this case with the mo-BEEL River, a gulf, the trade that comes with this proximity and ability to connect with various parts of the globe, it brings economic wealth and power. Now look at that, the mo-BEEL clock. We have not seen a clock in ages. It's fun to finally see a clock again here in the South. We have reached Dolphin Street. Memphis has Beale Street, New Orleans has famous Bourbon Street, and Dolphin Street is, I guess, mo-BEEL's iconic street, if you will. Now look at this. You could really see, generally in mo-BEEL, but especially in Dolphin Street, the old French architecture. Like, doesn't this really remind you of the French Quarter in New Orleans? Years of colonial influence from the French has truly left its mark on mo-BEEL. This church is part of one of the oldest parishes of Catholicism in this Alabama area. This church really serves as a can't-miss destination, even just for a glimpse on your journey through mo-BEEL. Anyway, let's see a little bit more of Dolphin Street. This historic street is quite long and still has a lot of things to be seen for us. Well, the time comes every so often where you just get hungry, and that time is right now. So, I suggest we find something Alabaman, because after all, we are only here for one day before we go on to our next state. Amazing. Amazing. Alabama barbecue at its finest. And you notice the white sauce? That's the Alabama sauce. Man, I am so full, I don't even want to move. Walking's a bit of a pain here, but the show must go on here on the Coverage Project. You got a little glimpse of Alabama-style barbecue. Every state has its own regional variation. And here in Alabama, they use a mayo-based sauce. Interesting for me as a northerner, trying all these southern barbecue styles. Today, Mo's Barbecue is one of many of the same name in a chain all across this area. For our experience at Mo's Barbecue, a great place with great service, great barbecue, had a great time. What a fun and eventful day we've had here in mo-BEEL. Now, although we are only in Alabama for one day, I hope I gave you all a great glimpse into the city and proved a little that Alabama is more than just its stereotypes. So, walking with a very full stomach, a little bit painful, on historic Dolphin Street in mo-BEEL, Alabama. More travels to come. I will see you at the next location.